Revelation ends, but power does not stop needing answers. That is where things become dangerous. Welcome to another story in the brief universal history of civilizations series. Today, I'll tell you about the Caliphate from about 661 to 1258, and about what happens when a sacred message must survive without a sacred voice, you see. This episode begins after certainty. God has spoken. The prophet is gone. What remains is a community that believes the truth is fixed, but discovers that decisions are not. Every choice now risks being called betrayal. Every ruler governs in the shadow of revelation he cannot renew. The Caliphate is not the story of pure faith turned into empire. It is the story of administration, law, knowledge, and power trying to carry something infinite without breaking it. It asks a brutal question. How do you rule a world when meaning is absolute, but authority is not? Voices overlap in the hall, sharp and impatient. It is around 670, and the air in Damascus is already warm in the morning. Muawiyah sits and listens, speaking little. Men argue about loyalty, succession, justice. Each claims to defend true Islam. Each proposal pushes someone else outside the circle, you know. There is no revelation to appeal to now. No new words arrive to close the debate. Muawiyah understands what this means. Every decision will look like distortion to someone. If he chooses order, he is accused of betraying faith. If he hesitates, he invites chaos. The memory of civil war is still close, carried in faces, pauses, and unfinished sentences. Outside, the city keeps moving. Tax collectors work. Messengers arrive from Egypt and Iraq. Armies wait for pay and instruction. Expansion has not slowed, and expectations have not softened. The state must act every day, even when certainty is gone. Muawiyah feels the weight of scale. What once worked in Medina cannot hold together provinces, languages, and armies spread across continents. He speaks at last. His words are measured, administrative, restrained. Authority is justified by continuity, not inspiration. Stability is presented as a religious duty. Many accept this. Others resist. The arguments do not end. They are simply postponed, I mean. The view pulls back. After the civil wars of the mid-7th century, the Umayyad rulers govern an expanding empire without prophetic authority. Power becomes sacred through office, memory, and precedent. The state survives by managing religion rather than producing it. By afternoon, the heat rises and tempers settle slightly. Decisions are written down and sent outward. Beyond Syria, governors act in his name. Old empires once ruled through institutions alone. Here, rule claims holiness without a living voice. It works, but only just. The Caliph governs not as a prophet, but as custodian of an order that can always be questioned. The reed pen scratches steadily across the page. It is around 700, and the morning light falls through a high window. The air is cool, for now. Stephanos sits at a wooden table covered with registers, counting columns of numbers written in Greek. Land tax, trade dues, arrears carried forward. The system is old. That is exactly why it works, you see. He pauses, dips the pen again, and continues. Outside, the city is quiet, apart from carts on stone and distant voices. This province once answered to Constantinople. Now it answers to Damascus. The change has not erased routine. Fields are measured the same way. Markets pay the same dues. Officials still argue over exemptions and delays. Stephanos knows that if these records fail, everything else follows. At midday, he washes his hands and steps aside to pray. The words are Arabic now. The movements are simple and practiced. For him, there is no contradiction. Administration belongs to habit. Faith belongs to obedience. One does not replace the other. They occupy different parts of the day. The population around him is mixed. Greek-speaking townsmen, Syriac villagers, Arab soldiers, Christian priests, Jewish merchants. Everyone complains about taxes. Everyone pays. That, Stephanos understands, is the point. An empire does not survive on belief alone. It survives on revenue. Without it, authority dissolves into intention. He returns to the table as the heat rises. New orders arrive, written plainly. Rates remain unchanged. Collection must be regular. Stability matters more than zeal, I mean. Stephanos recognizes the logic at once. The rulers have not destroyed what they inherited, they have stepped into it. The view pulls back. In the late 7th and early 8th centuries, the Caliphate governs vast territories by preserving Byzantine and Persian systems of administration. Fiscal continuity allows control long before religious uniformity is possible. By late afternoon, shadows stretch across the floor. Stephanos closes the registers. Beyond this province, wars are fought and faith is argued over. Here, the empire holds because it counts, records, and collects. Doctrine can wait. The ledger cannot. The coins feel cold in his palm. It is around 720, early morning, and the air in the town is still cool. Elias stands in line with other men from his quarter, waiting to pay the tax. He knows the amount. Everyone does. It is higher than before, but it is fixed, predictable, written down. That matters, you know. When his turn comes, he hands the money to the clerk and says his name. The clerk writes it carefully. No one asks him to change his faith. No one insults his priest. The exchange is brief and formal. Elias steps aside and makes room for the next man. The process feels impersonal, and that is precisely why it works. Later, he enters the church. The walls are familiar. The prayers are unchanged. The language is the same one his father used. Outside, the call to prayer marks the hours of the city. Inside, time follows another rhythm. Elias does not feel watched. He feels accounted for. There is a difference, and he senses it clearly. At the market, life looks ordinary. Traders argue over prices. Farmers complain about the weather. Soldiers pass through, paid and organized, but they do not interfere. Elias understands the rules now. He owes tax. He owes political loyalty. He does not owe belief. The boundary is clear, and because it is clear, it holds, I mean. He hears stories from elsewhere. Some people convert for advantage, others do not. Both remain within the system. What matters is order. The law applies differently, but it applies to everyone. The view pulls back. By the early 8th century, the Caliphate governs many religious worlds through a structured legal hierarchy. Protection, taxation, and limited autonomy are formalized. Islam functions as a portable legal and moral framework layered over existing societies. not as a tool of forced sameness. By evening, Elias eats with his family. Nothing has been taken from them today except money. In return, life continues. Beyond these towns, empires rise and fall through force or belief. Here, rule endures by separating belief from obedience and holding both firmly in place. Morning light slips into the study through a high opening, catching dust as it drifts in the air. It is around 8:30, and in Baghdad, Ahmad sits on a woven mat with a tablet on his knees, reading lines written in clear Arabic script. The ideas come from Greece, but he does not think of them as foreign. They are simply useful, you know. The room smells of ink and warm plaster. Other students sit nearby, copying diagrams, repeating arguments, testing numbers against problems. Ahmad reads slowly, moving his finger along the lines. Logic follows logic. A proof either holds or it does not. The source matters less than the result. Knowledge is judged by whether it works. Outside, the city grows loud and restless. Builders shout, water carriers pass, merchants argue in many languages. Baghdad expands faster than any city Ahmad can imagine. Power still exists, but it feels distant from this room. Here, attention belongs to texts, teachers, and questions rather than decrees. He knows the empire is no longer whole. News arrives of revolts, rival courts, governors who argue, armies that change loyalty. Yet none of this interrupts the lessons. Funding continues, books arrive from far away. Translation is labor, and labor is rewarded. Learning does not wait for unity, I mean. Ahmad pauses to pray, then returns to the page. Faith frames his day, but it does not seal his mind. Learning feels like service, not doubt. To understand the world is to honor order, even when politics fails to provide it. The view pulls back. In the 9th century, after Baghdad becomes the Abbasid capital, translation and study bind the empire more tightly than power does. As political unity weakens, intellectual unity strengthens, supported by cities and patronage. By evening, lamps are lit and the heat fades. Ahmad closes the book. Empires fracture, authority disperses, ideas remain. In Baghdad, meaning shifts from command to comprehension, and knowledge becomes the most stable form of authority. The call to prayer drifts across the fields just before dawn. In a small town far from Baghdad, Fatima rises with her family and prepares the morning meal. The words of the prayer are familiar. They have not changed. The authority behind them has, you know. Her husband mentions a new ruler again, another name, another banner. The soldiers who passed through last season wore different colors from those before. They collected taxes in the same way, but answered to someone else. Fatima listens without much concern. Power changes often here. Life does not. After prayer, the children help with work. The law applied in the town looks much like it did in her parents' time. Contracts are recognized, disputes are settled. The judge still speaks the language of faith, quoting rules everyone accepts. Yet decisions now lean more on local force than on distant approval. Authority has moved closer, even if it feels less certain. The Caliph is named on Fridays. His title is spoken with respect during the sermon. That is where his presence ends. No messenger arrives from the center. No protection follows either. When trouble appears, People turn to local leaders, militias, and family ties. Order is negotiated nearby, not promised from afar, I mean. Fatima remembers stories of earlier times, when command came from one place and flowed outward. Now order feels layered and uneven. Faith still holds the structure together, even as politics pulls it apart. The sacred remains central. Power does not. The view pulls back. From the 9th century onward, the Caliphate fragments politically. Regional rulers gain autonomy. Military elites rise outside Arab society. Central control weakens. Religious unity endures, but the caliph becomes a reference rather than a ruler. As evening comes, the family eats together. The prayers sound the same as they always have. The ruler's name may change again soon. Faith remains steady. Authority does not. The world still makes sense, but it no longer has a single center to hold it in place. The news arrives with a trader at dusk. The city feels quieter than usual, and dust hangs in the air from the road. Yusuf, an old scholar, listens without interrupting. Baghdad has fallen. The Mongols have entered the city. The caliph is dead. The words land heavily, but they do not shock him, you know. He sits in the courtyard of a small school, surrounded by books copied again and again by careful hands. Students wait for his response. Some expect grief. Others expect rage. Yusuf feels neither. A state can be destroyed in a single day. A system cannot. He has known this for years, even if others preferred not to say it aloud. What has fallen, he knows, was already thin. For a long time, the caliph ruled more in name than in fact. Armies obeyed others. Provinces governed themselves. Baghdad mattered as a symbol long after it stopped commanding reality. The Mongols have removed the shell, not the substance. Yusuf thinks of the law. Judges still rule in towns and villages. Contracts are written. Marriages are recognized. Disputes are settled by scholars who answer to no army. Schools still teach. Prayers still divide the day. None of this depended on the palace. None of it required an empire to function. He speaks at last, quietly. The state has ended. The order has not. Students will still learn. Communities will still gather. Law will still guide behavior, even as rulers come and go. Authority has moved away from power and into practice, I mean. The view pulls back. In 1258, the sack of Baghdad ends the Caliphate as a political state. Yet, Islamic law and learning survive through the autonomy of scholars. The system continues without a center. Night falls. Lamps are lit. Yusuf opens a book and resumes the lesson. Empires collapse through violence. Systems endure through use. The Caliphate disappears. The Axis remains. Empires promise order through power. The Caliphate promises order through meaning. That difference explains both its reach and its survival. What is gained across these centuries is portability, law that travels, faith that binds without needing walls, authority that can survive the loss of cities, dynasties, and capitals. When the state fractures, the system adapts. When the palace falls, practice continues. Islam becomes something rarer than an empire. It becomes a living framework. What is lost is unity of command. Once knowledge replaces obedience and scholars replace rulers, certainty disperses. Authority multiplies. Disagreement becomes permanent. The price of endurance is fragmentation. And here is the thought to carry forward. The Caliphate does not truly end in 1258. It finishes a transformation that began much earlier. Power dissolves, meaning remains. In the next episode, we follow what happens when this system meets new worlds, new pressures, and new modernities. When an order built to survive empires must confront a world that no longer believes in them at all. Next time, we move forward into the long aftermath, where the axis holds, but history accelerates. What you just saw is a single moment. But the history of civilization isn't made up of isolated moments. It's patterns of different mentalities. It begins with a campfire. Someone sits down, someone else listens, and for the first time, experience becomes memory. This scene is an opening, and everything flows from it. From the first campfire to the last city burning on a phone screen. The YouTube series is drawn from a book that sketches a mental map of humanity, how people thought, believed, and made sense of the world across 5,000 years and 50 chapters. Told not through rulers and dates, but through the lives of people who carried civilizations forward without even realizing it. The book, The Brief Universal History of Civilizations, goes beyond the YouTube series with over 50 maps, available on Amazon. Link in the description.